Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Yesshift, and this time I'm Steven. My Dan had to work on some stuff, but thankfully I'm not alone here. I'm joined by fellow guests Simon Barrow and Miguel Falcao. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with them in the Yes community. Simon being an author of Solid Mental Grace, a Yes related book, and Miguel having hosted the Play for Chris celebrations annually for about 10 years now. So how's it going, both of you?
Simon.
Oh, it's going very well indeed. And greetings from Scotland, who, for anyone who follows these kind of things, qualified for the what you would call soccer and we would call football World Cup, which of course will be in North America next year. So we're in very good cheer in Scotland at the moment. How are you, Miguel? Thank you very much.
Fantastic goal, by the way.
It was, wasn't it? Yes, there were several of them. And how are things with you, Miguel? Wondered if we get a bass intro to this, but
yeah. Well, from the bass perspective, I've done a mini tour of Poland with the trio in which I'm playing, which is a kind of a jazzy rock, more kind of thing, and in which I play the double bass. So it's completely different context, but with some connections to the music that we enjoy, because of course I put some of my own things, although I'm not the main composer. So also busy with the content that you've been probably watching about some Yes bass lines, some harmony analysis, and lots of other stuff going on with music. Thankfully, that I'm able to be with music now in my life 100%. So that's good energy.
That's really fantastic. And of course, I'd love to hear your trio. The kind of jazz rock area is very much my kind of area as well. Really interesting to transition into an upright bass as well. And the work that you do on exploring the bass lines and the music of Chris Squire, both in the Play for Chris videos and also in the dedicated videos, and of course a lot of shorts you're doing on YouTube as well, is really fantastic, and I know lots of us appreciate that. And it's great to see you. We were figuring out before the show started that we last saw each other 27 years ago, 1998, a Yes tour at Hammersmith Odeon, but we've cooperated and connected through email and the internet since then, but it's good to be back in the room with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. I remember one of our talks, or some things that we have talked about after I think it was the second show, because it was the 4th and the 5th of March. So it was like Chris's birthday, 50th birthday. Can you imagine?
Yes, it was.
Can you imagine? And we have agreed that on that second show, our favorite of the night was Starship Trooper. I remember that we talked about that, and I said, wow, Starship Trooper was so good, and he said, yeah, I agree with you, it was really the best one of the night, and of course it was a tour with a fantastic set list.
It really was. But Stephen, we're chatting away here. You've got us here for a particular agenda, so why don't you tell us?
You don't have a couple of beers to enjoy the conversation.
No, this is great. Like, this is the power of the internet, how Yes fans are able to catch up and connect and reconnect. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. We're focusing on the early internet days for Yes fandom with Alt.Music.Yes, or abbreviated as, I don't know if you say the letters AMY or Amy or both.
People tended to say Amy, yes. That's
okay.
What a lot of people said.
Yeah, Amy News Group. Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about that, and of course, we know that there's also Symphonic Live re-release news. We'll touch on that, and also talk a bit about Simon's books. But for starters, how did either of you first get involved in the early internet Yes fandom, and Amy in particular?
Simon.
Okay, yeah, I'll kick off. Well, in terms of Yes fandom, I've been a Yes fan since 1974. Actually, I was a bit of a latecomer to Yes. They've been going a few years, but by the time I really caught up with them, and I came from a background largely of classical music, actually. So Yes were the first rock band I ever saw live. 1977 actually is when I first saw them at Wembley, 28th of October. You can find some good recordings of that on Forgotten Yesterdays. But it was about another 10 or 11 years before I really connected with other Yes fans. And my connection was through something called Yes Music Circle. There were a number of fanzines produced in the UK by a woman called Tiz Hay. And then I think I connected with The Revealing, which was Paul Williams and Ian Hartley produced that. And then in the States, there was Susan Saccone with Wondrous Stories. So these were print magazines. But around about 1990-ish, 91, I was working at a university college in London. And there was this thing that's part of the prehistoric era of the internet called Usenet. Which was set up actually in 1979-80 by some students from Duke University and North Carolina as well. And really it was a kind of bulletin board system that was used by a lot of academics. So there would be little groups that discuss particular topics. And if you want to know what it was like, I mean, essentially, you downloaded this load of conversations and clicked on them, and then you ended up with threaded conversations, which were a bit like reading unformatted emails, I guess, really. And conversation took place in that way. And then in about 1987, there was a kind of huge set of arguments in the Usenet community, and a new, surprise, and a new hierarchy.
What, arguments in fandom? Never heard of that.
Well, a new hierarchy was set up called Alt. And so Alt.Music.Yes sort of came from that. But there was one before that called Rec, as in recorded, Music Progressive. And really Alt.Music.Yes emerged from that. Miguel may know more than me about this. I think probably the thing started around about 1991-ish. I think Henry Potts, who was very much involved in it in the early days, has the first recorded message from about 1992. And really it continued until, I suppose, the early 2000s, for reasons that we'll probably get into. The last posts that I've been able to trace are actually 2023. It was in September 2023, and someone posted something with an interesting title to it. I think it was just something about has it died? And really, the question was, anybody else around? And for a whole lot of reasons, this way of communicating went out of operation. But that's really what it was, and we can get into what happened on it. And Miguel, when I think I first connected in about 92, 93, and I was there until 96, 97. What about you, Miguel? I mean, I know that's where we first met online, but can you remember your earliest connections with Amy?
It was later. It could be like something like 94 or 3. First time that I got access, because I was at university at the time, and there were some computers that had this connection. They were just text terminals, and one of my friends he showed me these groups, these Usenet groups, and he explained me that there were several topics that we could browse, and of course my first idea was to look for one that was about Yes.
Yeah.
at the time, because at the time it was it was already my one and only favorite band. And so I remember that I could get those conversations and somehow save it to a diskette that I could bring home, and then I would read the whole thing, just in unedited shape, just the stream of characters. But it was so fascinating because there were people discussing Tormato, and that was unthinkable to me, that there was this kind of discussion going on in the world. So of course, then when I started working at university, and the systems evolved to a Windows-like environment, then I could access the news groups already in a kind of a live interaction. And so there was Rec Music, Progressive, and Alt.Music.Yes, amongst others, but those were the ones that really I would consultate frequently, and I really became it really became my everyday hobby to go there and to read and to participate. And you mentioned Forgotten Yesterdays with Stephen Sullivan. And Stephen was maybe one of the main contributors to what was going on. He was extremely knowledgeable, and it was great to read what he already knew. So many of the things that I know today from Yes, and you gather this information from many places, and the first place was precisely through the Usenet news groups, apart from some particular bass magazines and guitar magazines that I also collected. So it was mid 90s, 90, maybe 94, 95, and I remember that there was no Yes record yet to be released. So when Talk came out, it was already before I had a frequent contact. So I must have caught the San Luis Obispo shows happening, and some reports that happened, and then the Keys to Ascension, that that kind of area was when I was more frequent with my access to Amy.
Yep, and that was when we connected quite a bit as well. And I think what was it? I think your sign-off line was '1 Squire fan or something like that. I can't remember.
Squire #1 fan. Yeah.
There we go.
I would sign. Stephen probably doesn't know, but there was a kind of signature that we could end, like the ones that we put on emails. So I would say Squire fan #1. And very proudly, of course. And
absolutely.
And actually, there was a time, now that you mention it, that there was a time when I got there, that there was a kind of there were many factions. And I think you can introduce that theme also of the factions, which is very interesting. But there was, contrary to today, there was some people who were very critical of Chris's role in the band. They were very critic. So in those days, I had to stand up and get in fights. Well-educated fights, but to protect Chris's
reputation, yes,
to the image and decisions, etc., and music.
And I seem to remember you were always great in the way that you posted, because yours were always very well informed and well argued. And we did have a certain amount of trolling, I think, that went on Alt.Music.Yes. Probably not as bad as it is these days, but we had a little bit of that. But I think some of it was about the fact that people who liked the 70s Yes blamed Chris for moving into the dangerous territory of the 1980s and beyond. And then there were also those who had a proprietorial interest in John Anderson being the leader of the band and sort of argued that Chris was stealing that away from him and misleading them and so on. But Miguel always argued very cogently, and actually you kept returning to the music and Chris's foundational part in the Yes sound and how important that was. And that was, I mean, I was there because I was interested in the music, but there was all kinds of other stuff going on as well, of course. And you mentioned factions. And maybe we'll say, I can't remember if it's been discussed on Yesshift before, but I mean, I think there were sort of 4 or 5 main factions. People who particularly loved 70s Yes, it got labelled troopers, obviously after Starship Trooper. And then those who particularly were attracted to the 80s band were called generators because of the Big Generator album. And then there was a very small faction of which the major voice was probably Henry Potts, actually, called Panthers. Who particularly liked drama. And of course, in the earlier days, drama was not accepted and revered in the way it increasingly is now. I mean, I know, Stephen Wilson has said that his 2 favourite Yes albums are Tales and Drama. That was kind of unthinkable in the early years. So a group emerged in defence of drama. I believe there was one person on Alt.Music.Yes who claimed only to like drama and not any other Yes albums.
Oh, wow.
but I suspect that was someone who was just trying to do that to wind a few people up. And then you had people whose interests spanned, of course, the whole of Yes music, and they were called, rather dubiously, Yes holes, which...
I've heard of this.
you need to say that a bit carefully. I suppose I kind of fitted in that category myself, in that, if you ask me, for me, the core of Yes music is 3 albums: Close to the Edge, Tales from Topographic Oceans, and Relayer. Those are the ones that for me are absolutely iconic within the history of Yes. And the ones
those are my top 3 favorites.
And they drew me into the band. But I wasn't one of those who, when Yes moved into the 80s, was immediately dismissive of that. And I haven't been right up to the current day. I think, the new album is really, really good, particularly the title track, and so on. So I've always tried to find, to follow Yes in the different paths that they've gone. I have my own favourites and commitments within Yes music, but I'm open to all of it. And it's, of course, one of the ironies of progressive rock that many fans of progressive rock are decidedly not progressive in their views. They have the view that it should be this and this only and not that. And those kind of discussions did happen in Alt.Music.Yes, of course. So that was the factions.
Yeah, and in fandom, factions are always inevitable, especially when the thing you're a fan of has a lot of longevity and a lot of output and different releases. So it's funny how back then it was like mainly 70s versus 80s, and of course you had that little drama faction. But these days, like we said, drama has had a resurgence, particularly within the last 20 years, and so people aren't so harsh about it now. And it's like now the main factions seem to be like, should Yes have John Anderson, or is it fine without him? Like those are the main arguments now. And even when Benoit joined the band, there are a lot of critics then. Now people are like, there are some people who say they preferred the band with Benoit than with Davison. But yeah, I'm part of the the Yes hole, if you want to call it that, where like I appreciate the output of the different lineups, and some of the arguments, that they get tiresome. It's like, why even, like, if you're not a fan of the thing right now, the current direction, then what's the point of just like commenting at all about it instead of just scoring away and whatnot? Just let people enjoy what they enjoy.
Absolutely. I mean, the answer is listen to something else, really. But I think people whose lives are dedicated to going onto every social media post to say this is a tribute band or it's not the real Yes or whatever. And you suspect that many of the people who've done that haven't really gone to see them or haven't actually listened carefully to the new material anyway. I mean, you get that, and I'd be interested in Miguel's view on this. You get all the criticisms of Billy Sherwood, who I think is an amazing musician, has done a great job, and of course Chris, his close connection with Chris. I mean, so really the spirit of Chris's playing, although Billy is a different kind of player, but he manages to combine his own style with a real tribute to Chris in the way that he approaches that music. And I just wish people could recognize that. These debates they've changed over the years, but those kind of arguments are ones that will always persist, I guess. I have to tell you, I was also in Alt.Music Classical, which was a little quieter than the rock groups, I think. Although I remember particular arguments about Mahler. There was a famous quote, "Mahler's music is better than it sounds." I remember that was a lovely quote that someone came up with. And the jazz ones, of course, were the arguments between the traditionalists and the innovators as to whether Miles Davis had ruined jazz or whether he'd simply pioneered it in new directions. So it's not just connected to the rock world, but we have our own way within the rock world of factionalizing. But anyway, I don't know what you think about all that.
Miguel. I think as long as these discussions, they are a proof that the band is still with a degree of interest, because otherwise, if there is no communication, no exchange of opinions, then I think that's a bad sign. As long, of course, as the discussion does not go to offend someone personally or something, and I think that was part of what ruined in the end the news group, because it got a little bit out of hand, and it was not that it was so offending, but it was the amount of spam that a simple user like me who came for the music and the information, it was beginning to be impossible to get any value for the time that you were spending there browsing. And we are now talking about 30 years ago browsing, that you really had to browse things to look for subjects, to look for threads and replies. So when you start to watch a conversation and you are just navigating through what we call then flames, that's people shouting at each other with caps lock, full speed, and things. So it wasn't interesting anymore. So, but as long as the discussion is with with some humor, and I remember in the good old days they used to call Trevor Rabin leather pants. You remember, Simon? Leather. I don't like those leather pants and something. It was like people were discussing in a friendly way, and even with my great friend Pedro, that was also in '98 with me, and he was actually the one who introduced me to Yes. We used to say, look at that song, like speaking about a Yes song. That's horrible. That's how did he play that note? But of course, we are talking about something we love. So we can the adjective of horrible and disliking and and that's weak, and it's always in a way that it's not really to offend, but because we are between friends, and it's always relative to our favorite band. So so it's not we don't really mean it. It's like a friendly talk.
I think that's true. And I mean, I was going to say, maybe we should say a little bit about what kind of things were discussed. I mean, not great surprise there, but there was, of course, huge amounts of discussion about Yes lyrics. There were discussions about the individual musicians, and particularly when they went off and did solo stuff or collaborations. There was quite a lot of talk about, John Anderson's spirituality. You imagine it. Some people, I guess, talked more at the level of what they liked and didn't like. Other people, with more of a musical background, perhaps dived into the weeds of particular songs or particular pieces of music. I remember having a discussion with a couple of people about Awaken, which is one of my favorite Yes tracks, but someone else said, no, it's just an uninteresting circle of fifths, so we then get into a big discussion of that.
I think it was actually Stephen who arguing that that it was, because it was just a circle of fifths, it shouldn't be regarded as
Stephen Sullivan.
Yes, this is true. I was trying tactfully not to mention Stephen. That's one of the few things I agree with Stephen about a lot of things to do with Yes Music, but his uninterest in Awaken is not one that I agree with him about, and I think it's a very creative double use. Well, it's actually, of course, a circle of fourths, because what happens is that they reverse it, and then Wakeman plays arpeggios over the chords and so on. But we had this kind of long and involved discussion about that, and I'm sure Miguel was on the right side of that argument, although I can't quite remember. But while we're mentioning Stephen, who's a wonderful guy, and of course, doing a fantastic job these days with Forgotten Yesterdays, he actually pioneered an earlier website called Yes Gigs 1968 to 1980, which was the first, moving towards comprehensive view of concerts during that period, and then that got integrated into Forgotten Yesterdays. But Stephen posted, very good material on Alt.Music.Yes, although, given where he's from in New York, sometimes he could be a little impatient with some people over certain kinds of things. And he did actually create what for me is perhaps the best ever put down of somebody I've ever seen on the internet. And I was wondering if he'd got it from someone else, but I think he thought of it. He was having a conversation with someone who we'll call Dave for the sake of this. And he said, Dave, there is a very thin line between madness and genius, and you're nowhere near it. Which I just thought was an absolute stroke of genius. It was also very funny, so it kind of broke down the argument as well. And then, of course, you also had Henry Potts posting an awful lot of material. Henry is what I would call an encyclopedist. He kind of, is very good at marshalling data and information, and he would provide huge amounts of background information on things. So, at its best, it was really, really great. And then you had the kind of more argumentative people. I think I'll give a good shout out for Rob Allen, who I love, but I think Rob was the person on Alt.Music.Yes who achieved the greatest number of disagreements with the greatest number of people. But it was often entertaining when it happened. So, there are characters, and I think that's the important thing to say. It was a kind of community that wasn't small. I mean, I guess there were probably active members, most of the time, a couple of hundred people, probably, a lot more who were lurking behind the scenes. But, characters did emerge on it. And then, of course, we had the people, who were involved in the Yes world, or who'd done interviews with the band, who would come on. And so on. I can't remember, I don't think members of the band really. I think there were ancillary musicians who came on, but can you remember that, Miguel?
I don't remember people directly related to the band. No. But since we are mentioning Stephen Sullivan, he was one of the first ones to, because Stephen is an accomplished bass player.
Absolutely.
He was already at the time. He was providing some tablatures.
Yes.
Some MIDI files, if I'm not mistaken. But some material related to bass guitar, at least bass guitar, and that was maybe something that I took on when I started making my own bass covers, which maybe Steven Schinder is not aware of, the first bass covers that I ever posted, I posted on that news group, Alt.Music.Yes. Of course, at the time we did not have the means to post a file, so we will just post a link, and then I would have in my university computer a server that would host some MP3 files, which is just audio, and then they were translated to another site that I was offered by a friend named John Goodall, and he made a website for me. I don't. Do you remember, Simon?
Yes, I do.
This friend, and so those were very pioneering days for internet users. Even Henry Potts' site was a kind of a format like text only, which I think he still preserves until today. So if you want to have the experience of browsing Netscape Navigator in 1996, you just go to his site, because it's still with the same kind of hypertext things, and very, very typical from the era.
It is, and it's called Where. I'm sure most people know it. Where Are They Now? And of course, it has a number of sub-pages as well, and he updates it very regularly with new information. I have asked him how much he's sort of archived, because obviously there's some material that gets taken off as he puts new material up, but I hope that there is an archive of that. And I suppose that's the other question, is there an archive of Alt.Music.Yes? And the answer is that it moved over at one point to Google Groups, but Google Groups stopped supporting it in 2023. And I imagine, again, I don't know whether Miguel knows, but I think that's more or less when Alt.Music.Yes or Amy kind of ended. As I say, I saw this last post about has it died in September 2023. And you can find bits of it on sites like Narchive, which is a kind of archive site. But you'd need some specialist, software to be able to try and access the whole thing. But it's out there somewhere. Nothing disappears from the internet fully.
Well, yeah, I know that the Wayback Machine gets snapshots of certain sites, so you could conceivably see like an earlier version of Bondigazoo, Henry's site, and see what earlier news posts were like on there. So yeah, that's definitely one resource that people could try to use for some of these things.
Okay. I'll try, because there were really, even my reports of going to see Yes live, I'm probably reporting there when I went to see them in the Open Your Eyes tour. I wrote something. The Ladder tour, I also wrote something. I'm not sure if with the Magnification concerts I was still there contributing in late 2001 probably, but there's a lot of information that is still useful, and it's just text, so it does not take many space to store. So hopefully it's still available.
Yes, I think quite a lot of people also cross-posted at that stage on Forgotten Yesterdays, their concert memories and concert reports as well. But you've reminded me, I think probably 97, 98 was when I stopped participating in Alt.Music.Yes. That, I think I said 96 earlier, I think it was a little later than that. But around those tours, I remember discussions, and I remember your posts about them and discussions as to the arrangements and what Chris was doing and various other things. So it was great stuff.
Yeah. Being born in 1994, I missed out on some of this like as it was coming out. But when I got on, I think around 2007-ish is when I started like discovering, oh, I can watch all these Yes concert clips and solo clips on YouTube, and in the comments was where I would see the discussions between fans. And I don't think I got onto Facebook for all that until like 2010. So, in between all those years, like, or even before, like the mid 2000s, I would just now and then go to yesworld.com, see if there's any news there. I'd check out Notes from the Edge, and in like 08, 09, I would go through all the Notes from the Edge issues to see what Yes fans were saying back then from like 1990 onward. And so that gave me an idea of some of the arguments that people had, like Yes West versus ABWH and all that stuff, preferred lineups and whatnot. And so it was interesting to see all those snapshots. And over time, it's like things kind of change, but also stay the same for better or worse. Yeah. So
I mean, just mentioning that, Stephen. So, I mean, also part of the demise of Alt.Music.Yes was to do with the technology, and the technology changed, and so Usenet became, something that wasn't going to have a future, clearly. But then you had the emergence of Notes from the Edge, which I think happened in around about 92, 93, that kind of time. That was Jeff Honeycutt and Mike Tiano. And of course, the difference with Notes to the Edge was that it started off very much as a kind of fairly simple format that would be like reading an email these days, and fans contributed to it their own comments, but in particular what Jeff and Mike did was to interview members of the bands. There were some great interviews in that period.
Yeah.
So I think some people started moving away from Amy towards Notes to the Edge. I mean, some people did both. And then, of course, you had Yes fans which started, I think, around 2003. And that saw quite a big shift, I think, away. And also, as Miguel has mentioned, unfortunately, there were one or two grudges connected to projects that members of the band had been involved in that started coming up on Alt.Music.Yes and rather taking it over. And that, and also the spam, meant that I think quite a lot of people left around that time. So that's really the kind of big shift towards a new generation of online Yes fandom.
Yeah, I think there were... sorry, I was just going to say, I think there were others involved in running Notes from the Edge at first, and then Mike and Jeff came in a bit later. Like, I think it changed hands a couple times, but yeah, it does, like, from when I looked back at what those internet days were like, it does seem like around the Keys to Ascension era was when stuff was sort of changing for Yes Internet with, Yes World and Forgotten Yesterdays, and at some point there was even like a virtual John site where something would just generate lyrics in the style of John Anderson. And it was, I remember, like, when I discovered this, I thought it was kind of a funny, silly, charming thing. And now it's like, with how AI stuff is now, it's like you could get really scary with that kind of thing now.
And then, of course, let's not forget also the notorious CD-ROM that came out with the Talk album.
Oh yeah, Yes Active,
which is quite entertaining to watch, really. The attempt by Victory Records to turn them into kind of almost reality TV stars in the way that was put together. that was certainly entertaining. So it's interesting.
I do have that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember what Chris did on that, or what happened to Chris on that.
He talks very, very little on that one.
Yeah.
It's mainly John and Trevor. I think expectedly that John and Trevor, they are more active.
Yes, and it's the kind of it's almost the visual equivalent of ELP's notorious Love Beach, really, if you look at the images on that. So there's some funny moments.
Speaking about CDs, so and since we are at Amy,
let's get into it.
Yes.
So, Stephen, you already made a whole episode about this one. And
Yeah,
thankfully,
Siberian True
yeah,
with a CY.
exactly.
Siberian Katru. It's a double CD. I think it was it you, Miguel, who put it up on YouTube
Yeah,
eventually, and which is really great. And of course, the one of the many things to note about it is the cover, because that's Bob Sesker who did the Magnification album, and I think I think I'm right in saying that cover image, the one in the center there, they were originally considering using it for the 2002 In a Word Yes 5 CD collection, but then Roger Dean got back involved in it again. And so Bob let them use it for Siberian Katru, which is amazing.
yeah.
I didn't contribute to that, but I know that Miguel had a role to play in it.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
how long was that project being developed? Give us a bit of a behind the scenes for that.
it should have been like not more than 1 year. I think it was really quick. Um,
I
the thing
remember
is
it being
that,
talked about, Miguel, around about
yeah,
2000. I think there were discussions of it, and then you all
yeah,
got going on it in 2001, and it appeared in 2002. It was quite quick, really,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah. It was quick because um, there was, at the time, there was still a big activity, and probably at the time I was also getting into make my own music, and I could have some technology to record. So that was really the beginning for me also to have a home studio, basically.
Mm.
and
Mm.
and of course, with the bass covers I was already doing, um, I don't know whose idea it was, but I mean, it's such a great idea that for that moment in time, people wanting to organize a whole production, because this is not just making the songs, it's the whole CD production, because this is something that now you can order with a click of a mouse. You can edit the cover, and you will have in 1 week the CDs, a box of CDs at your place. But 25 years ago, of course, this was big logistics.
Yes,
It
it
requires
was.
a production team to take care of all things, to sign the authorizations, to give the rights for the music to the CD company or whatever, or to the publisher. So it was really well organized. It was in fact
Mm.
so well organized that I don't remember being bothered about bureaucracies, or I just had to do my thing, and the way that it was organized, it was very smooth for everyone, and suddenly it was there. Of course, I didn't see that the bulk of work going, to from collecting each song and then turning it to the final product. But I think it was very well organized, and especially I think the ones that got involved, the musicians, and they really got along very efficiently because it was so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of great music on there, and what's cool is it doesn't like it's not a Yes tribute album, but you see what these musicians who were influenced by Yes were able to put out on their own. Do you know if there were ever any discussions of doing another one of these back then?
um I don't think so, because the timing was that soon after, then it was, people started going away
Mm.
from uh,
Oh,
from
from Amy.
from that. What I did do was to play a bass line, and this is very funny, of Siberian Katru itself, so the song, for a project that was like, I think was also a pioneering project at the time. They were trying to do what now we call a collaboration. that
Right.
many musicians, one plays the drums and is in another part of the world. So they did that, and they asked me to do the bass for the for Siberian Khatru. And somehow I don't know where the final product was. I don't know if I still have the file, but that was the other only project I was involved with, and it was a really good cover, I can tell you.
Yeah, and I remember going back to Siberian Khatru for a moment. I want to ask you a question in a moment, Miguel.
This one or the song?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you about the piece you did. You did a piece called New Pictures.
Oh yeah.
On the album. Maybe tell us about that. But to mention, Chris Oberst did a couple of tracks as well, and they were slightly more experimental. I really remember enjoying those. And we should give a shout out to Len Richardson, Timothy Martin, who actually did a lot of the audio compilation and production and so on, along with Robert Seeberger. And John Thielen, I think, was quite involved as well. And as Miguel has said, I wasn't directly involved in the project myself, but I was talking with a few people who were, including Henry Potts, who of course wrote the liner notes for it. And it did go pretty smoothly. And I remember people sort of laughing about this and saying, if you look back on some Yes projects, those were incredibly difficult for all kinds of reasons, both amongst the band and amongst lawyers and so on. Unfortunately, none of that was reproduced in the production of Siberian Khatru. It was a fairly harmonious sort of project. But can you remember anything about what you did with New Pictures, your contribution to those CDs?
So that's a piece that I have written for the 8-string bass. That by that time it was like my new toy. I always wanted to have an 8-string, and I got it from the internet and from also a site that doesn't exist anymore, which was called Bunny Bass. So it was like a kind of a personal ad for selling bass guitars, and I had it from the US.
Right.
So this Sonus 8-string bass, and the person who sold me the bass, he was working in a kind of what we now would call plugins for audio. So, at the time I was using that on Cakewalk, which was the one of the main softwares for recording audio, and it still is. But back then it was kind of the only more advanced that I knew. And he offered me a plugin of reverb. So I ended up the reverb that you have on the track was produced by that plugin that the person who sold me that bass that I played. So it's the same it's the same person who gave me the bass and the effect. And as far as the song is concerned, it was taking on Chris Squire's tuning of the Rennie bass, where the top two strings are in fifths.
Right.
So the song changes and others. I decided to create a song that would be with the top strings not in fifths, but the D string would be in fifths and the G string would be a major sixth.
Right, yeah.
So and with that I could generate kind of chords that sounded very nice to me, and from then I tried to taking the footsteps of Chris to come up with the different tuning and see how it turns out. So that's how I developed the song.
And I have to say, it's one of my favourites on the album. I'm not just saying that; it really is. But I mean, what was great about it was precisely what you described, which is that you used a similar process that sometimes Chris used in, it'd be a tuning or an instrument or whatever, which would actually produce an idea for the music, and that's exactly what you did as well. So that was terrific. But it was it was a crowning achievement of Alt.Music.Yes and the community that had been brought together, and that it turned out to be not just a discussion community, but a musical community as well, which is fantastic, and a creative community. So as you rightly said, Stephen, the important thing about the album was that it wasn't just a Yes tribute album. It was actually people who'd been really influenced and shaped by the music of Yes, then sharing their own creativity and their own ideas, some of which sort of were somewhat in the progressive rock area, and others of which were surprisingly different, which was great. Actually, I should have re-listened to it in the run-up to this show, and I haven't done that, so I'm going to go away afterwards and have a listen to it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a listen. So while we're talking about that era, that early 2000s era, let's touch a bit on this news that came out today, actually. So I'll go ahead and share the tab of this. So this is in the yesworld.com store. I was a bit surprised by this. So Yes, Symphonic Live is being re-released. It's estimated to ship on or around January 23rd of this coming year. And this is there's a Blu-ray plus 2 CD collection, and there's also 4 LP version. So here it says this reissue is packaged with a CD-sized clamshell box featuring the Blu-ray and 2 CDs, each housed in their own slipcase, along with a booklet, fold-out poster, and 5 art cards. And yeah, it says a bit about the band as well. And the extras, it does maintain the extras, the Don't Go music video and the 30-minute Dreamtime documentary. So you got, let me zoom in on this a little bit. Oh, wow, that's actually really big. So it looks like the artwork has also gotten a bit of a makeover with some of the details, or a couple figures on the landscape there now. I'm not clear on whether this has the CGI bits that you could watch on the original DVD when you press a button on a remote, if I remember correctly. And I'll go ahead and show the 4 LP version as well real quick. But overall, what do you two think of this news of this upcoming re-release?
Are there some extra songs or?
So it says 14 tracks, so I don't know that there are any extra songs. The LP, it has, the 8th side is an etching because the others have the rest of the tracks. But let's see. Look at the track list. I don't notice anything that's extra. It's pretty much the tracks as I remember them.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, it depends of what is presented. I do have the DVD, and it's one of my favorites. I wasn't at the in 77, Simon, that you were, or 78 that you watched Yes for the first time.
77, yes, 28th
77. So 77 is a great tour, and I know that video from Glasgow. It's absolutely fantastic. But from the tours that I watched, I have a special place in my heart for the Symphonic tour, because I think they were so much trying to play everything so well, and so accurately, and so everything in tune, and the orchestra, and it's so difficult to get all those things right, and it sounded amazing.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I must admit, when I first heard about the album and the tour with an orchestra, the record of rock bands with orchestras has been slightly patchy, really, and it can end up sounding rather cheesy and so on. But really, a huge amount of work was put into making it sync really, really well, and that's a great tour. I mean, I remember it in person. I managed to get to quite a number of shows on that particular tour. In terms of a release like this, I mean, I think it will, appeal to a lot of people. I've probably reached the point in my life when I've rebought my Yes collection enough times. I think I will get the topographic one. I'm probably not likely to get this one, but it will reach new ears and new generations as well. I must admit, and I don't know how Miguel feels about this, I think probably we're amongst the Yes fans who'd say that what we really want to see is the release of, for example, the 78 Wembley shows, and some of the other material. There must be a lot of live material around. Now, I mean, we have got some great unofficial recordings, I call them, and of course, Forgotten Yesterdays is the place to go for all of that material. But I think there's some quality, particularly where there were radio broadcasts, even though the sound was compressed a little bit, there could probably what we would like. But I understand that record executives will be looking at a generation of Yes fans or incoming Yes fans with larger pockets than perhaps we have, who are wanting those kind of nostalgic box sets. And there is the possibility of Blu-ray and various surround options as well. But probably a number of us will be saying, well, what are the extras on this? And that will be the way that we'll judge it.
You got me thinking, Simon, exactly, because when, for example, Stephen is going to ask us the opinion about a certain release, our thoughts begin with, am I going to buy it or not? Is it worth for me? But of course, that perhaps shouldn't be the only thing that we should tell. I mean, I think it's very positive that there is a reissue of the of the album, of the concert in the first place, because it's been 24 years or almost 25. It's it deserves to be rebooted in a way that now things are rebooted. So now everything is going to be either Atmos or I don't know, maybe Blu-ray and with a documentary and some, I don't know. So it's good. It's good that they are they are re-releasing stuff and possibly it can appeal to a generation of people who are not yet very much into Yes, but when they see that concert, they hopefully they will see this is not like any band's gig with an orchestra, just just doing what some string pads can do. That's real music that was made for the orchestra, and it was interplayed from between the band and the orchestra. There's something very special about those concerts. So I think it will be good to be re-released.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that the other thing is that the concerts themselves were wonderful. The arrangements, including the adjustments for live arrangements, because live performance with an orchestra is different to arranging and putting things together in the studio as well. And then you had Tom Brislin, of course, with the band at that stage, amazing keyboard player. Perhaps somewhat overlooked, so people will be able to enjoy his performances as well. And funnily enough, just as an aside on that, you were mentioning Cakewalk earlier. I think Igor Koroshev was involved a little bit with Cakewalk at one point as well. It's a little bit sad what happened
Yeah.
to him, because again, he was an extraordinary contributor to the band, and his own demise was a little bit sad. But we want to try and remember the happy side of things, not some of the difficulties. And as
Sure.
Miguel has said, this is a way of making sure, and even those who don't buy it might think, oh yes, I have that CD or I have that DVD, and return to that music, and other new people will be turned on to it, which is really important.
Yeah, this is a DVD that Dad has had in his collection. I've not had it in my own collection for whatever reason. I've watched it. I've watched the documentary and the music video on it, but since I don't have it in my collection, it was an instant.
You're the market.
For me.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep,
So I ordered it before the show actually, so I'm expecting it
there we go.
in January. Yep. And in a way, it kind of keeps that era alive, or reminds people of that era. I mean, I think a while ago we heard that there might be something going on with a potential magnification re-release, so I'm hoping that this is maybe a foreshadowing of that. Like, I would love to see a reissued magnification.
Release the multi-tracks for everything. It's what I
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I don't need more remixes. I just want the multi-tracks.
You just want the multi-tracks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You and Rick Beato.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the people who love, to make that kind of archaeology. And of course, absolutely. I would go straight to
the bass,
to Chris's tracks, but
yeah, absolutely.
Well,
you have a remarkable ear, and that really shows in your playing. But I'm sure if you had those tracks, you'd also discover things that we hadn't heard before. So
yeah. That would be great. But that's also what keeps the interest. Things never have to be too easy.
No, exactly. And music is alive, and it lives and it breathes, and these are ways in which it can find expression, and that's really important.
Right, definitely. So as we wind things down, Simon, I understand you have some words to say about a book or two, so why don't you go ahead and let the viewers and listeners know?
Well, that's very kind of you to do that. So when we were talking before the show, you mentioned the book that I did do on Yes a few years ago. There it is, Solid Mental Grace, listening to the music of Yes. I think there's a thank you in that to you, Miguel, particularly. And I was very fortunate to do that with a small publishing company in 2018. In fact, I think it's also mentioned in February for the Yes Music podcast calendar. I hope you don't mind me mentioning that. But I was actually very privileged to be able to launch that book at the fan convention on the weekend of the 24th, 25th of March 2018, which was the 50th anniversary tour. So that was very, very special. The publishing company, Cultured Llama, who did that, closed their list a year or so ago, which means that the book is technically out of print. I do have some copies here in the UK if anyone wants to get hold of one, but I am actually looking later next year to do a completely new edition of it, which will probably be called Solid Time of Change, another quote from Close to the Edge, still listening to the music of Yes, and we'll have some re-editing of the existing material and 5 or 6 new chapters. But before I do that, I have something that has been on it's part of my sort of the guilty side of my conscience, in that 2.5 years ago, I agreed with the wonderful Stephen Lamb of Sonic Bond. And if people don't know Sonic Bond, check out www.sonicbondpublishing.co.uk. Fantastic publisher of books on a whole spectrum of rock music, including progressive rock. And of course, Stephen has been on this show as well. And he commissioned me to do a book called Yes in the 1990s. And I'm still finishing it. It's personal issues, professional issues, health issues got in the way over the last couple of years. So huge apologies, Stephen, for that. But you will get that book. And I hope it will come out, because I think the 90s is a sort of overlooked era for Yes, but I think, it's actually a really important era. If you think about it, in terms of albums, for example, we had Union, we had Talk, we had the 2 Keys to Ascension albums, we had Open Your Eyes, we had The Ladder, then we had the Something's Coming BBC recordings from the early years of Yes. House of Yes Live from that tour was actually recorded in 99, released in 2000. We had Yes Years and Yes Story, the compilation albums. We had Highlights, the very best of Yes. We had all the members, including the classic members of Yes, doing an awful lot of solo material. So it was a very active period.
Yeah.
I think
In
all
fact,
but 2 years. Sorry?
In fact, more output than the 80s themselves.
More output than the 80s.
Yeah.
And in terms of touring, I think there were only 2 years of that decade when the band weren't touring, and they did some extraordinary tours. And I kind of describe it in the material that I have written for that book so far as sort of Yes in renegotiation. They'd come from the 70s, they'd gone through the 80s, and yet the question is, where was Yes going to go next? And there were different musicians and different forces on the band opened up different possibilities, some of which worked out, some of which perhaps didn't work out. But if you listen to the span of that music, there was still some amazing music in that era. And I really hope that the current band might revisit a little more of the 90s material. I know there's a tendency to go back to the 70s and certain elements of the 80s, but it would be really good to explore that. So, I do promise to finish that book and make that available next year. And perhaps there can be, a bit of a revival of 90s Yes as a result of that. Who knows? But anyway, it's very much on my conscience and on my agenda, Stephen, if you're watching, which I'm sure you are at some point.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that book. Mark Lang, who's tuning in, has commented about the Yes set list and how, John and the Band Geeks play a bit more of the new music than Yes have been. And I myself am always pushing for Yes should play more of their new music. But like you said, they should play some of those obscure 90s cuts as well. I think that would be great. And, earlier we were talking about Troopers and Generators. It's like, what do you even call fans of 90s Yes when they're all over the place with the merger with Yes West and ABWH? They get the Yes West finale sort of thing. Then classic Yes lineup returns. And then you get a newer Yes with Sherwood and then Khrushchev coming in. It's just all over the place. It's such a fascinating era. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find a moniker for 90s Yes fans and so on. Yeah. But more seriously, from the span of that era, and there's a huge amount of music of that era, as you rightly said, Miguel, it was actually more produced than in the 1980s. Are there particular tracks that you would love to hear live that we haven't from that era, can you think?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Simon, because in my Facebook page yesterday, I put one question, and it was from the songs that Chris never played live with Yes, which one would you like to be, that you would wish that he would have played? And my first example from this was Fortune Seller. Yes,
absolutely.
From the Open Your Eyes, yeah, and that's a kind of example of something that it's one of my favorite songs from Open Your Eyes and from the 90s. The way that the bass is built, and then it leaves for a synth bass, and it has those funny vocals, the Steve Howe soloing, it has the Igor's solo, organ solo. It has so many elements, and they are really condensed in a short piece, so you don't have any chance to get bored. It keeps moving.
I so much agree.
I would that example just for my Facebook post. But
it's great to hear you say that, because that's a track that I love, that you kind of think, I bet no one else really likes that. But I think, although Open Your Eyes is an album which lots of people, are critical of and dump on. And I'm afraid Steve Howe has sort of said, "Oh, I don't really think of it as a Yes album." But actually, I think if you listen to that album, you've got Fortune Teller, Universal Garden as well, The Solution, and what's the first track called?
New State of Mind.
New State of Mind, of course, as well, which I also love. So I think there are some really good material. There would certainly be a very interesting compilation album from the 90s era, actually. And I think if you put some of the best of that material together, it stands up very strongly overall within the Yes catalogue. I think Fortune Teller, probably you'd agree, Miguel, would be a bit of a challenge for anyone to play live, but it could be done, I'm sure.
Yeah, it would require.
There's a lot of lots of sound processing on it. That's the challenge, really.
Yeah. But you have to work for it.
Well, there we are. If when I manage to get the book done, maybe that will encourage them to to do something.
Yeah.
I don't think so, really, but you never know. You never know.
Right. Yeah, and maybe the Symphonic Live re-release will encourage them to do more magnification as well. That's a dream, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Dreamtime, for example. I just love that track. I think that
was amazing. One of the tracks that was requested by some of the replies that I.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd enjoy it as well. I'm sure.
Yeah, I love it.
Right.
It would be even more difficult because it has like at least 2 bass overdubs between fretless and the 8th string and I don't know exactly how much basses are there. Release the multi-tracks.
Then you would know. A certain amount of that could be done with synthesizer, but it would be a challenge. And of course, there's a big chunk of orchestral music at the beginning as well, which. But there we are. But I'm sure. I think. What would be lovely would be, and really that's a sort of for tribute bands as well, to sort of rediscover and reimagine some Yes music, because music is living and breathing. It can move forward as well as be reproduced faithfully, as the current band is trying to do with its historic material, and that's important. But there are also ways of rediscovering and reimagining music, and I think if we're going to call it progressive, we ought to be able to do that as well.
Right, definitely. Well, this has been a really fun, geeky Yes discussion. Dave Watkinson in the comments put it so well, saying enjoying going back in time with you all. I see Greg Young also tuning in from Oklahoma City. Wubino says going for the One tour. I seen Yes at Madison Square Garden. That must have been amazing. But yeah, thank you, Miguel and Simon, for joining this discussion. Go ahead and we'll start with Miguel and then go to Simon if there's anything we forgot to mention. But go ahead and let people know where they can find you or anything you're working on online.
Okay, so my main point of contact is miguelbass.com. So from there you can get access to my Facebook page, my Instagram, YouTube channel where I have the videos. So, but everywhere you can just type Miguel Bass, or what you see here, my name Miguel Falcão, and you will find me. Of course, I invite everyone who is not aware of my social networks to get in touch if you like Yes music, if you want to discuss a little bit, especially with focus on Chris, obviously. I will be posting there also my activities with my other musical projects. I also have a Patreon page, which is patreon.com Miguel Falcão, that you can also visit if you want to support my activities. That's it.
All right. And Simon?
Okay, well, I mean, in terms of Yes stuff, which is what people might want to connect with me about, I am still on X, in spite of the problems with that site, and I'm at Yes Solid Mental. and there wasn't room for the grace in the title, but that's still mental. So you can connect with me there, or drop me a private message you want, particularly if you want a copy of the book Solid Mental Grace, Listening to the Music of Yes, the old one. But as I say, I hope the new one will be out. At the moment, I need to update my other internet resources, not nearly as efficient as Miguel at that. But I will say I've got another book out this year, actually, which is slightly different. You can see it there. It's called Beyond Our Means, Poetry, Prose and Blue Runes. It's a collection of poetry and prose. There are a couple of sort of Yes references in it, I will say that, but you can find that on Amazon and other kinds of places. But a lot of the work that I do is outside the Yes realm, although I do do a lot of music reviews for the Edinburgh Music Review, which you find online, and for the Scotsman newspaper occasion as well. That's more in the classical jazz kind of area, but X is probably the best place to contact me in terms of Yes stuff. And it's fantastic to see Miguel again, and great to have Dave Watkinson contributing, because Dave has been such a major contributor to keeping Yes music alive and curating it, and the writings that he's done and the exhibitions and so on. So there are so many people who gather around Yesshift, who are part of that community, and it's great that it's still there and still moving forward.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'd just like to say that we should this more, and not just with me, but get Simon, get Henry, Stephen, David, and people who have lots of many interesting things to say, not just for the past sake, but also for the present.
It's a bit of a catalogue of white men, but I'm sure we hopefully we'll find some women and others as well. But
right.
And thank you, Stephen, for creating this space, because this is really, I'm sure that lots of Yes fans appreciate the fact that you are putting your efforts daily, almost daily, to keep things interesting with Yes stuff, and to unite the fans around your podcast.
Thanks. That really means a lot. Like, we try to, stay on the pulse of what we can here, and it's, it can be a bit of work, especially with the news episodes, having to like put everything together for that. But in the end, it ends up being a fun time. Yeah.
Yep. Great.
All right.
I'm listening, so I'll keep listening.
Indeed.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, everyone. You can follow us at Yesshift on Facebook and YouTube, and write Yesshift podcast at gmail.com. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.